Welcome back, nerds and turds, to another live stream repair. Before we get started on our usual HomePods, I wanted to give you guys a quick sneak peek inside of something else I've been working on. We recently got a hold of this broken SingCell Alpha. It was in one complete piece. However, as soon as you turn it on, the LED starts blinking green and it'll start playing a really loud sort of TV static sound. It's quite interesting because it clearly demonstrates that the speakers and the amplifier are working just fine if it can full blast play that kind of obnoxious whatever, but it won't let you reset it. It won't connect or pair or pretty much do anything. So I figured we've got, really nothing to lose with this thing. Why not try to use it to figure out how to take these things apart and share that information with other people, and also just get a decent look inside of these things, because from what I can find online, there is almost nothing out there on working on these. There's nobody that's taken any of these apart or shown the insides. There's one guy a year or so ago on YouTube that had Syng send them the subwoofers, but he only showed the subwoofers and you didn't actually get to see the inside of the Syng itself. So, just really quick, here's how I got in. Of course, we started by removing the poles off of the stem of the cell here. And then what you have to do is look on the bottom where you plug the power cable in. And if you look inside of these three holes, let me get my flashlight here so you guys can see in there. So I believe they are 332-inch hex screws in there. And I don't know if you can see that, but as you rotate the dial, it will... See that? It'll expose those hex screws further down. And that's like 100 centimeters deep. So you need a fairly long hex key to get down to those. But once you've got to those, you need to loosen them step by step. You don't want to loosen one all the way. You want to loosen each of them a little bit at a time until you've got all three of them loose. And then this should just basically pull straight up. You only want to pull it out of the subwoofer about 1 millimeter or so until you can expose the T6 screw holding that FPGA connector down. Once you get that removed and unplugged, this can come all the way out of the subwoofer. And then to take this apart further, this tape here is covering a nut that we can unscrew and take this apart a little further, but we haven't gotten that far yet. And then once you've got your stem off, you can see this. I think it's a T10 bolt that's sitting right in the middle of the subwoofer. And if you unscrew that, then what I did is I found a couple of screws that fit into these holes, and I screwed them in, and then I got some pliers and I pulled the subwoofer straight up, and it was a little stuck, kind of like they used some very light adhesive, or it just settled really well. But once it unsticks, it'll come straight out. And then similar story, you don't want to just pull it all the way out. Pull it out just enough to where you can access this second FPGA connector right here, and that is underneath 2 more T6 screws and a metal retaining plate. So once you get that unplugged, then you can pull the subwoofer out a little more, and you can unplug the subwoofer's main connection and the other connector right here, and the subwoofer will come right out. From there, it appears mostly straightforward. That's about as far as we've gotten. So we are quite limited on time these days with having to put dongles together, and HomePods always showing up that need to get fixed and what have you. But very soon I'm hoping to have like a full teardown and exploration inside that speaker and maybe even fix it. In any case, let's get our HomePods up here on the table. The first one up here has no power, a very common issue here. This tends to happen when the Schottky diode on the amplifier goes bad for no other reason than it's just a low quality diode, so replacing it with a good new one will prevent it from happening again. And while we're in there, we are going to replace the DC filters that also go bad over time and lead to death farts and other bass issues. Let me shoot this fellow a link so they can watch along, and we will jump into it. Let's see. Alright, the link has been sent. We can crack open something to drink. Alright, what have we here? We've got no power at all. No lights, no nothing. We've got a couple of watts being drawn from the wall, which tells me my guess is correct. It almost certainly has that pesky little diode inside. So let's get this apart and get it fixed. Oh, where's my T6? I need my T6! There we go. It sounds like the printer's done with its latest batch. I'll shut that off in a second here so we don't have to keep listening to its fans. There we go. Now it's just the PC and 12 other things in the room causing noise. I think we might be able to get away with that. Hey. Oh yeah. A minute or so ago, that liquid that you saw me drip into the subwoofer and swirl around, that is 99% isopropyl alcohol. It helps peel this top basket off by messing up that glue. And it doesn't do any harm to... Sorry, gotta sniff the subwoofer, you know? It doesn't do any harm to the rest of the parts in the HomePod, so... Quite a nice little trick that someone had let us in on a while ago. There we go. Still glued in there really well. Too well. Ironically, as I tweeted a day or so ago when I was sharing photos there inside of the SingCell Alpha, ironically, it seems that taking apart the SingCell Alpha is actually easier than a HomePod, despite its looks. Oh man, it was great. A few days ago, I managed to get the stem off, but I could not figure out how to get the subwoofer out. I couldn't figure out how to get the thing apart further, and I must have been sitting here with it in my lap, just staring at it for a good hour. And every once in a while, I'd pick it up and rotate it around a little bit, look around, and then I'd put it back down and stare at it for a while longer. And that thing had me really stumped. But let me tell you, the feeling when the subwoofer just pulled straight out, I couldn't believe it was that easy. I could not believe it. And like, oh man, I just think it's cool that like I figured it out all on my own. Nobody else knows how to take those things apart outside of Syng. Syng themselves have been incredibly tight-lipped about doing any kind of work on these. They're pretty adamant against you doing any kind of work on them. As a matter of fact, they will not support you whatsoever or sell you any parts or tell you how to do anything. So you know, for people like myself who end up with one that breaks and it's out of warranty when they told you it was going to last for generations, you kind of want to do something about that other than be at the mercy of the manufacturer. That's how we got into HomePods. I bought one for myself, really liked it, wanted more, couldn't afford more, and was also worried about spending money on a bunch more just to have them break and no way to do anything about it. So what did we do? We figured out how to fix all their issues. To my surprise, nobody else really knew how to fix most of those issues, so we figured it out. We put the info out there. People started asking us to fix their stuff for them. And, well, here we are a few years later. It's kind of crazy to say that years later now. And we've been pretty much live streaming all of these repairs almost every single day, the whole time. first, I was only doing private live streams to the people, sending them in. I was not that confident. And it took us a fair bit longer, too. But we got good.
Yep.
Oh, lovely. Alright, so what we're doing here first are the DC filters, the ceramic capacitors. These tend to naturally decay over time and lead to death farts and other bass issues. So we're going to get these replaced first since it still has the originals. And then we'll flip this around and replace that dead diode that's causing their power issue. More than likely that diode has a date code of 46K or 48K on it. Color me completely shocked when it doesn't. When we see one day that's not with that date code. What the heck is going on here? Why are my tweezers being so trash? Alright. Those are pretty squared up. Let's get this diode. What have we got here? For 6K. There we go. Alex, welcome to the stream. How long do these filters last? Well, we cannot give you a definitive certain answer because there are too many unknown variables without schematics for this amplifier. But that said, there's no reason to believe that since we're using pretty much the highest quality caps that you can get as replacements, there's no reason they should not last longer than the originals. So you're looking at least another 6 years. I'm expecting them to last more, around at least 10 years, but like I said, it's hard to say. There's a formula to actually calculate how long they're supposed to last, but and I'm sure someone else could take a look at the amplifier and figure out exactly what they're going through and how long they will last. But we do know for sure they last longer than the originals, and that's going to be 6 years or more now. It does kind of depend on your usage too, I imagine. That may be incorrect. But, I mean, to calculate how long the caps last involves knowing a few of their power factors, and so I imagine listening to it more frequently at louder volumes puts them under more load, right? But yeah, there is no super simple, straightforward answer for that. I imagine we could go super hardcore. Do some like absolutely unnecessary audiophile amplifier upgrade where we've got like super thick, tall electrolytic capacitors like these as filters instead of the dinky little guys there. But more work than it's worth. You'd have to figure out where to put them because those are facing down and there's no room for anything to protrude out. I mean, what I want to do, I've been keeping my eyes out for a DIY amplifier board that you can just buy from an electronics shop that will be strong enough to power all of the speakers from inside of the HomePod. You know, so it needs to fit inside. And it also needs AirPlay 2 support. Now, there's plenty of DIY amps out there that'll fit in here and fit most of those bills, but one that I have not been able to find yet is one that still keeps AirPlay 2. And gosh darn it, that is the thing that I use the most on my HomePods, is AirPlay 2. I use that for music. That's pretty much the only thing I use my HomePods for. So if I'm going to mod it to use an aftermarket amp, it's going to need to keep that. But one of the benefits of that aftermarket amp too would be, you know, like Bluetooth support, as well as auxiliary in support. You know, the debug port on the bottom of the HomePod, we could easily repurpose some of those pins to be an auxiliary input with a dongle, and that way you're not worried about, you know, having to drill a hole into the HomePod to have a headphone jack in it, basically, or an aux jack. I got big dreams for these little HomePods. It ain't over even when there's no way to fix any of their hardware anymore. I will keep them going. Because, I mean, like, the amp, the power supply, the logic board, all that stuff, sure. Expect it to last, not forever. 5, 10, 15 years, whatever. But the speakers themselves, like the subwoofer and the tweeters, there's no reason those shouldn't last basically forever, so long as what they're being fed is good and not bad crap, like DC voltage from ceramic capacitors that went bad. Alright, and then once we get this put back together, they did tell us that this was still, you know, it's been a few years since it had the power issue and stopped turning on, so it is on a really old operating system. I think we will just do the USB restore on it instead of having to pair it and then wait for it to download updates over the air, and heck, maybe even break itself doing that just for us to have to plug it in via USB and restore it anyways. We can just plug it into our computer and update it straight to 17.6 and be done with it. Ooh, it is real dusty. Yeah, they weren't kidding. It's been a while for this thing, hasn't it? Well, I guess my fan's about to die. It's gonna get real hot in here. And we've got ourselves some power. This calls for a celebration. Let's get these next few pods opened up from Michael. Let's see what he's even up with Michael's HomePods. One, when plugged in, will have a soft thump every few seconds. The other one, no signs of life. Alright. Which one will we pick up first?
I'm having trouble connecting.
Very nice. Aren't we all? Alright, let me go set this one aside. So that I don't forget to update it. And there we go. Couple of HomePods here. Which one will we get first? Quick condition check. Got a teeny tiny little crack on the top right there. The tiniest of cracks, but a crack nonetheless. Oh, a couple more cracks over here, so this will be a little tricky to get off without making worse, but we can do it. Does this one... Ooh. What? What the heck? I have never heard that before. It's like an actual heartbeat. Okay. That sounds like it just keeps trying to turn on, shorting, and then turning back off. So let's get this apart. I am expecting to see a catastrophically destroyed amplifier. Still though, I've never, out of the thousands of HomePods that I've messed with, never had one act like this. When they said it makes a soft thump, I was thinking it was the more typical, wake up or stand by, low power mode kind of thing. Not a constant, literal heartbeat like that. But like I said, I'll be surprised if this is not just a hardware failure and it's just trying to turn on and back off. Oh, we should put which one we're working on next to Michael's name up there. There. Is the subwoofer okay? It feels okay and it smells okay. Smells like my therapist's office from middle school. Back when I was an angsty. There's a fly floating around and he's a big one. But I know I'll end up spending 20 minutes trying to swat him out of the sky and give up anyways. You win this time, fly. But your time is near. Just you wait till this stream is over. Mind your business or I'll get you. Alright. How is this subwoofer? It's in excellent shape. It smells fantastic, looks fantastic, feels fantastic. Oh, I do see a blown up resistor on the amplifier there next to where the subwoofer plugs in. That's usually a casualty when those DC filters that we preemptively replaced in the previous repair go bad. I'm curious to see if we can... Oh boy. Nah, if this thing isn't even turning on at all anymore, chances are it's got a big hole. Just a giant crater in the middle of the main amp chip. But we can hope. And moment of truth. Ah, it's exactly what I thought. We've got a massive hole. Oh, it has been a minute since we've seen one of these, since we've had one of these come in. Wow, that should not be there. And it's just, oh geez. Alright. Looking around the rest of the pads around the chip, it looks like it might be possible for us to replace that. And there's no more damage underneath, and it might just be that chip there. But we are instead going to just swap this whole amp out with another one here. Hey Michael, how's it going? Oh, I noticed a very small pop when one of my HomePods wakes up from standby. That is perfectly normal. If it's just a quiet little pop, click, or tick every once in a while like that, then it is perfectly normal. If it gets noticeably louder over time, and it becomes more like a thud, or like somebody dropped the microphone, that is a sign of bad things to come. Alright, is this amp good? It appears to be a very nice amplifier. So we'll get it out. We're going to replace the usual maintenance items on this amplifier before we just drop it into Michael's HomePod here. We do not want the same problems happening again, and they are bound to happen again if we just swap parts around without kind of knowing what we're doing. Ah, no. Absolutely not. A single screw or component can swap between a first gen and a second gen HomePod. Quite literally, the only part that you can trade or swap between a first and second gen HomePod, the only part that's the same, is the gasket for the ribbon cable. They changed everything else. So, I get asked that a lot, surprisingly. But it's pretty obvious once you start looking at the teardowns and you do like a comparison between the internals of the two. There's just nothing would swap or trade between them. Not without basically redesigning and, making another speaker to adapt it. I mean, serious reverse engineering just to make the parts talk to each other. Not even the mesh, unfortunately. They are, well, No, not even the mesh. The way that the mesh attaches is different. On the first gen it goes on from the top, and on the second gen it goes on to the bottom. I got those two backwards. But point is, you cannot swap them. So let's see. The date code on this diode is not 42 or 4, or sorry, it's not 46 or 48K. It's actually 52K. So that one's not going to fail on us. But we do still need to replace those filters. There's no great way to tell if they're going to go bad anytime soon or not, so we just replace them every time. That is if they're still the originals. Ooh, after this HomePod, we've got one more from Michael, and then we've got David's. I'm willing to bet David's probably watching right now. Eagerly awaiting to see his pod pop up here. Well, it's good to see we don't have to replace another subwoofer today, at least on this HomePod, but do need to replace this whole amp board. I might be able to replace that blown up chip. We'll see. I'll take some time someday, eventually, trademark, to take it apart and see if it can be refurbished. But if not, it is regaled to the parts pile, where it'll get picked by yours truly until it's completely clean and its guts are strewn all over the world inside of other people's HomePods. How those look? Ever so slightly crooked on that bottom one. Let me push it up just a smidge. Perfect. Alright, this amp need no more. We can put this HomePod back together. I'm going to take one more look at his subwoofer before we put that back in, just to make sure it didn't get fried and it's just hiding half a burnt voice coil underneath the good part of it. But if the voice coil was burned, we should have been able to smell it, even if we couldn't see it. That stuff is just nasty. I love the smell of hot wires, but I hate the smell of burned subwoofers and voice coils. Hot smells good, burned smells bad, basically. Ooh. Alright, I'll sue you if you steal my idea. I'm gonna come out with a cologne that smells like warm electronics. Somebody already came out with that. Damn it. But if not, I'm calling it now. I'm gonna make it. Ooh, nerds with droopy necks all over the world would love it. I would love it. What will be the first component to get very rarely in terms of replacements? I'm not sure I understood your question. I think you're asking which component will become the most like rarest or the most scarce eventually. And I suppose that's a toss-up, because all of the components are pretty repairable. Like, for the most part, the majority of the parts used to build the components are off the shelf. But I imagine, like you speculate, the logic board is the most complicated piece. It's the only piece that pretty much you would have to have really advanced tools and know how to basically dump data off of the old chips and restore that data onto the replacement chips if you were to replace, you know, the CPU or storage chips on the logic board. So by that alone reduces the number of good boards out there and logic boards that people would be willing to even bother fixing. The amplifier, for the most part, everything you can get off the shelf. The controller chip for the amplifier, that STM chip, questionable. What I need to test is if doing a USB restore flashes an unprogrammed off-the-shelf chip, or if we need to find a way to dump the firmware off of that STM and flash it when it is replaced. The good news is none of the parts inside of the first gen or the second gen, or any HomePod for that matter, none of the HomePod parts are serialized in the sense that if you swap things around, they're going to stop working. The exception to that is, of course, the CPU and the storage chip. Those two need to be serialized and married, or they will refuse to talk to each other. But the CPU and the storage chip are usually on the same board anyways. So yeah, I think you are on the right train of thought with it probably being logic boards that will still, you know, despite us, you know, we recently found that fix for the ones with blinking volume buttons that are software issues. You can just plug them in and restore them now. But that'll probably cause a fair influx of repairable or refurbished parts for first gens for a while there, and then that'll probably become the scarcest part. For the most part, though, I don't see anybody selling individual HomePod parts online. You get the one or two here and there, but 99% of listings are complete whole broken HomePods for parts. So there is that. The subwoofers, I imagine, I've actually kept every single subwoofer that I've replaced for people. I've kept the old one, and let me tell you, my room smells. It's stinky. It smells like stinky subwoofers, but my hope is that I can find somebody that will be able to refurbish them. Repairing and refurbishing a speaker, like just the subwoofer speaker, is perfectly feasible. And heck, there are custom speaker manufacturers out there that would be able to replicate it too. But I see subwoofers for sale all the time, even like new stock ones, like for sale on AliExpress and other places in China. I imagine they usually gotten their hands on a batch of some for manufacturing somehow. But the subwoofer is a fairly simple component, so it's a lot. It has a much better chance of being able to be rebuilt than some of the failures on the logic board to a lot of people. I would have a better chance of refurbishing a subwoofer than reballing the NAND or the CPU on the logic board, frankly, right now. I gotta get good at that. Woo! No, you can't just swap the CPU and restore it. You still need to do some advanced work by dumping and restoring data directly to the chips in order for the CPU to even talk to the NAND or the storage chip in order to restore it. If you don't do that and you swap the chips around, then you're not even going to be able to restore it. Until you program that CPU and GPU. And we're talking like you hook up basically, and I could be talking wrong here because I don't do this, but basically you take the chips, you connect literally directly to them, you dump their raw data, extract the serials, install the correct serials, install the chips. Then you can do whatever you want with it. Then it's at that point effectively just another HomePod. Hey, we've got some power
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. I'm having trouble connecting.
Very nice. The volume buttons light up nice and evenly. She sounds loud and clear. So that is one successful HomePod repair for Michael. Let's take a look at the second one. It seems to have fared the travel a lot better. I don't see any cracks on the top of this one. Let's plug it in and see what it's doing. Yep, we've got no power and a couple of watts from the wall, so that is the typical dead diode. Let's get this taken apart. We'll replace those capacitors that we've been replacing in every HomePod to keep those same problems from happening, and then we'll replace that diode to get it powering on again. There we go. Ah, these ones are kind of tough. I'm putting up a fight. How's our woofer? Fantastic. We are in. First things first, a little bit of maintenance. Let's give it some new filters. Yeah, be it refurbished, new, or replacement, they're all the same production run, just in a different box. Funny you say that too. I've had 2 different people send in prototype HomePods for repairs, and unfortunately, for obvious reasons, I wasn't able to live stream those repairs. One of them was significantly different on the inside, and the other one was basically identical. Both of which were sent in for the classic no power issue, and you guessed it, they had the same crappy diode inside with the same date codes we expect to see. So they've quite literally used those diodes in every single HomePod. Now, whether or not your HomePod has a date code that's known to fail or not, that's a complete chance, and there's no correlation to the serial number of the HomePod. You just got to take it apart to find out, and at that point you might as well just not worry about it until it does happen, if it ever does. You know? But someone at Apple knows, and well, that ain't right. They know about everything we've been doing. For all we know, they've been watching everything we've been doing, too. And, what the heck, guys? If you're watching, what the heck? What the heck, Apple? Doing us dirty like this? You think nobody was gonna ever figure it out? Or were you just waiting for someone to figure it out so you could just destroy them if they ever say anything about it? Alright, let's get the Schottky diode. Would you look at that, 46K. I mean, like, the only way this could be worse for Apple is if this diode actually didn't do anything other than fail just to cause issues. If it actually didn't have a purpose other than that. I may be the reason they even came out with a second gen. I like to think that way. I like to think we're that important. Maybe one day. Maybe we already are. Again, Apple probably already knows. What I and a couple of the other hardware nerds really want to know is what that B23 AP board configuration is that belongs to audio accessory, like the alternative audio accessory 1.1. Never seen it. No one knows what it is. Was it like a prototype mini before they came out with the mini as it was? When is this diode failing? Well, I mean, we have people that use their HomePods on a daily basis, and we still see diodes dying after 5 or 6 years from now at this point. So, and even then, not a single diode with a date code that we don't expect to see. And every time we crack open a HomePod that that we're working on for, some other issue, and its diode is working just fine, it is almost never those date codes that fail. And there's plenty of examples out there of that, so it's still only a correlation, but it's an extremely strong one with nothing else to explain. Nothing else to explain it. And the proof is in the pudding. We've been fixing these for years, and not a single one that has had its diode replaced has had that diode fail again. Not something we were able to say when we first started these repairs for other people more than 2 years ago. We just had to go out on a limb and hope that we weren't walking ourselves into basically a massive class action lawsuit where we charge a bunch of people to fix their HomePods and they break after another few months again. That's probably a large reason that keeps a lot of people from getting into offering repair services in general, is just that. And there we go. Let's see. One second here. All right.
I'm having trouble.
Very nice. Michael. Wow. Thank you. That is one super chat right there if I've ever seen one. Goodness. For each HomePod device, there is another audio device configuration, and we're able to see the whole list from them. Yeah, it's called the iPhone Wiki. If you search on Google for the iPhone Wiki, you will find, or heck, if you search Google for the iPhone Wiki audio accessory 1.1, you'll find, that'll send you down a whole rabbit hole. Alright, let's get David's HomePod up now. David's HomePod looks like it's going to be another no power. Oh man, it's so ironic sometimes. Like we get, and I mean, it totally makes sense. Use what you got. Reduce, reuse, recycle. But sometimes we get the biggest boxes, and it's just one HomePod inside, and then I'll pick another box up, and it's got two of them in there, and it's like, you look at the box and you're like, how did they even fit two in here? Oh wow, this is really creative. I like this. I won't show you guys because it's got a bunch of their addresses on it, but basically took a whole bunch of old cardboard boxes and rolled them up as impromptu packing material, which, hey, that's going to work perfectly fine for a little speaker like this. Not something I would recommend for, say, a SingCell Alpha, but I'm trying to get this thing out of here so I can reuse this sleeve of bubble wrap. Yes. Very good. I'll pull this cable out, and when we send it back, we're gonna plug the cable back in, but we're gonna wrap the HomePod in bubble wrap and leave the cable outside of the wrap, so that way we don't leave a bunch of imprints on their mesh here. Let's see how this thing and what this thing is due. All right. Well, let's get this apart and do our usual. We'll give it some new filters to keep those death farts away, and then we'll replace the diode for the actual power problem. Sorry, yeah, here we go. Been a kind of a long stream, eh? Oh yeah, between 1.1 and 1.2. So I can't remember how it's represented, but the first gen production HomePod is audio accessory 1.1, and its board config is B23AAP, but if you go to ipsw.me and you go to the firmware files for the first gen HomePod, they've got the first gen HomePod, the mini, the second gen HomePod, and then this mystery unknown one, which appears identical to the first gen. But the difference is its board config is B23AP. It's missing one of the A's. No one, as far as I know, knows the difference. And no one, as far as I know, has seen one of those in the wild. An M-powered. Oh, I would be impressed. I would be very impressed if, let's see, end of 2017. It would be around 2016, 2017 when they would have been messing with this mystery audio accessory. And off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you if Apple silicone was a thing back then. I don't think it was. I don't think Apple Silicon was a thing for another few years. But hey, maybe that was the first prototype device where they were testing Apple Silicon and was a HomePod. And they were like, why did we do this? We could stick this in a laptop and sell it to people instead. As if they didn't spend too much money researching and developing the first gen as it is. $249 per HomePod that it cost Apple to manufacture these from what I call dirt to your doorstep. That is the entire cost of every single unit. It cost Apple $249 to get you that first gen HomePod. So, from that perspective, the price was a hell of a bargain. The retail price, let alone the sale price that they normally went on for. And I mean, when you think about it, they basically took an iPhone 6, simplified the display, removed the battery, added a bunch of speakers, made it plug into the wall, and called it a day. Oh, there's a lot more work than that, but very, very simplified. It uses the same CPU as the iPhone 6 or 6S, one of the two. The last time I heard a company pulling off shenanigans such as reusing old chipsets to make a new product because they still have a whole bunch of them left over from for whatever reason was Motorola and the first gen Moto 360 smartwatch. That thing, you can thank for Android watches being where they are today. Without that thing, I don't know, the competition would probably still be Apple Watches and Fitbits. Which, granted, would probably still have been bought by Google, and that would have been the thing, is still Fitbit or Apple Watch. But Motorola came along and made the Moto 360 smartwatch. Oh man, I bought one of those as soon as possible. That was my favorite watch. I wore the shit out of it. I bought one for my girlfriend. I convinced my roommate to get one. Notorious for the back of them cracking because of a design flaw where the wristband presses against part of the back. And I want to say they ended up not really doing anything about it. Oh, no, I take that back. They launched a program where they would give you these free inserts, these little spacers that would basically insulate the space between the watch band and the back of the watch. I still have my first and second Moto 360 and my wife's first and second gen Moto 360. What a great watch. What a beautiful watch. And like the circular display, people were memeing on the flat tire at the bottom, but like at the time, circular display, bro. Come on. Look at those bezels. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up images of the first generation Moto 360. Oh, where was I going with this? The whole point. Yeah, Motorola launched the Moto 360 Android smartwatch. Completely changed the game for Android smartwatches. But the funniest thing is they used like a TI OMAP processor that was like already like 3 to 5 years old or something, basically completely obsolete, and everybody was so butthurt about it. But in my opinion, they had optimized the software so well that for the most part it was perfectly usable. I didn't have any problems with battery life or performance. Still to this day, tied in first place as my favorite smartwatch. It is tied up against the Huawei. Oh my, it's dead. The Huawei first gen smartwatch, because it uses a sapphire glass display, and these are impossible to scratch. Let me tell you, I wore this thing in the military for a few years and it still didn't get a single scratch on the screen. I've worn that watch swapping engines out of my car, all sorts of weird and precarious, dangerous situations. Not a scratch on that screen. All right. We've got the HomePod equivalent of GasX installed. Look at that, another 46K data diode. If I had $1 for every 4.6 or 4.8K data diode that was blown up inside of a HomePod, I might have enough money to buy Apple and force them to recall these things. So what's weird is it's the release version, the production version of the HomePod that is audio accessory 1.1. But you do make a good point with the board config being B23AP and the release version being B23AAP. That makes sense. They probably did add or tweak or change something. I mean, and it would have had to been significant enough that they have to build a whole nother different version of the firmware for it too. So it's gotta be something pretty big. Alright. David's amp is all freshened up and ready to go. Some component decisions would have been from 2012 or possibly even older than that too, which is just insane to think. What a wild product. Just for it to get discontinued like that and then reborn into some really cheap, half-assed second gen. Like, they're alright. And frankly, they're gonna do just fine for the majority of people that wanted a HomePod in the first place. But personally, I just cannot get over the difference, the different sound. Like the first gen just sounds a little warmer, a little more like it's got a little more raw power behind it. The second gen just sounds a little weaker, a little tinnier, slightly more controlled and tighter, but still a little weaker. And especially like as soon as you hear Siri's voice between the two, it's like, yuck. I don't want to use you. But that could most likely just be my bias. And in any case, it's as far as sound quality goes, it didn't sound like there was anything wrong with the quality, with the actual quality of the audio coming out of the second gen. It's just a little different, and it doesn't sound, it's not the sound that I have come to really love with the first gen, so. No, so, I mean, the second gen obviously has fewer tweeters than the first gen, right? It's only got 5 instead of 7. Granted, however, they are a newer technology. They use neodymium magnets instead of rare earth or whatever it is. And their orientation makes it look like the second gen tweeters are firing directly at the surface the HomePod is sitting on, compared to the first gen, where it's got to kind of curve around a little bit before it hits the table and bounces off and hits your ears. So that, I think, is where what I'm noticing the difference in sound quality is coming from. A more tighter, cleaner, controlled sound, but maybe slightly less powerful from the second gen, because those speakers are literally being more directly pointed. They're reflecting less to get to your ears than the first gen. But the first gen does have more. It has more speakers. So it's kind of like the debate in the automotive industry, like where people like modify their cars, and it's like, do I turbo the 4-cylinder or do I drop in a V8? And like, it's endless debates about replacement is displacement versus like, oh dude, just bigger turbo, you just turbo it bigger, you can make any 4-cylinder faster than a V8 if you build it right, you know? And it's the same with the V8, you can make it better than any 4-cylinder turbo if you build it right. Point is, I don't know where I was going with any of that, but we're almost done putting this HomePod back together, and we are long expired on our remaining time for the day, so we gotta get this thing back together so that we can take care of the rest of the day's duties and then put some more USB restore dongles together, because oh my god, I've got, as anybody would expect, an absolutely bonkers number of requests. Now, we're not talking hundreds yet, but for a single guy where it takes 10 to 30 minutes per adapter to put together. And yes, that is a very wide number, because there's a few steps that I still haven't ironed out, and you know, we haven't gotten it down to the most efficient process, but we've gotten a solid dongle that we're confident enough to send out to people to start rolling out the fixes. But yeah, after this we'll end the stream, and then we'll take care of some errands and put together some more dongles to ship out tomorrow. My face when I ordered like 10 USB-C pigtails, expecting them to be configured correctly to show as a device and not as a host. Lo and behold, I get them, and that's not what they do. So I'm panicking. I've built all these adapters already. None of them work, except for with certain weird configurations. And I'm trying to think, like, how can I make this work without having to redo everything? And then it clicked. Crimp a standard USB-A end to it, and then get a USB-C on-the-go adapter. And then if people want the USB-A dongle, they just get USB-A. If they need USB-C, I'll throw in the USB-C dongle. Problem solved. I'll have to tweak my pricing, but at the very least, people that, you know, the early birds that are jumping right on these are getting a good deal on the dongles for the cheapest price, because I mean it's only going to go up from here. They're only going to get more expensive. I'm only going to make them nicer and nicer, and the option is always out there for you to make your own. Download the STL, go to your local library and borrow their 3D printer. I know my local library has a 3D printer and free material for you to print out with. Put that adapter together, and there you go. I try to give people as many options as possible, because especially with these bricked HomePods, where you can't tell if it's a hardware failure or a software failure without at least trying to restore it, or, you know, USB access. And a lot of people don't have that access or the tools to gain that access, so they're in kind of a crappy situation. They can place their bets on a $20 dongle and $10 shipping or more for worldwide shipping, and hope that their issues are just software. They can restore it and they're good to go again. But there's inevitably going to be hardware failures out there. And there's no great way of knowing how many of them, even guessing, like speculating what the failure rate out there is. That said, I have been buying bricked HomePods over the years for parts to fix other people's HomePods. I've been breaking them down. I'll take the logic board out, write down that it's bricked and set it aside for the day that maybe they'd be able to be de-bricked, and reused the speakers, amplifier, cosmetics, what have you. Used them for parts. And let's just get this back together. Yeah. If this was my full-time job, and or I didn't already have a full-time job, I would have all the time in the world to fully design my own adapter that would be manufactured and made, and it would be like this. it'd be nice. It would be very nice. Like you would expect to buy something like this from the Apple Store nice. And you're buying it for $20-$30 from some dude out of his garage. But in the meantime, we're doing with what we've got, and that is a 3D printer and hot glue. At the very least, these are, I'm calling these like the V1 adapter. These are for the early adopters. And I'll come out with a V2 soon. And by soon, I mean probably a few weeks or a few months. But I'll come out with a V2 adapter that is proper manufactured and of very professional quality, to the point where even if you don't have a HomePod, it'll be a really cool piece of merchandise to buy from us and just have. I think it'd be really cool for us to sell merchandise that isn't just crap. I like things that are functional. I like things that work. Like this HomePod. If any of you are in manufacturing and design, do not hesitate to reach out to me if I'm speaking your language here and you're like, this is a walk in the park for me. Let me handle it. I'd be more than willing to work with you on that. 'Cause boy, do putting these dongles together take away the absolute negative free time I had.
I'm having trouble connecting.
Like, we're staying up till like 1 in the morning putting these things together and then waking up at 4 to put more together.
I'm having trouble.
Alright. Folks, I hope you all enjoyed this live stream repair. And I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.